All right, we're back, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Biblical Hitman, folks. My name's Steven, host of the show. If anyone wants to support the show, be sure to head on over to Patreon, patreon.com/the Biblical Hitman. It's where you can get all of your ad-free early access and direct chats with me. And we got a community over there building, so it's pretty cool. If anyone wants to support the YouTube channel, head on over to YouTube, hit that subscribe button, like the show, share it with your friends. Definitely helps the show grow, and we're all here to kind of support each other over there. Also, if you want to support the show on audio platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spreaker, Spotify, those are the places you can go while you're there. Hit a follow, drop a review if you like the show. Hopefully, good reviews only. But it's good to be here in the studio. Oh my goodness, we got such a banger episode tonight. Really, I don't even know if I can cover all this material in just a few hours, but we'll see how long it can go, and we'll see how much we can get through it, because this is something that's been on my heart. It's something that's really not only been on my radar, but it's something that I've been digging into the most, really trying to put together all of the world's agenda all into one bag. And it's almost like you put all these things into one bag, and all I see is Atlantis. And I really think that with everything going on, right? As a Christian, not of the world, not living in the world, not being a part of the world, I see the world coming together. And I see the world coming together with a bunch of different narratives that are all they're all in a collective organized approach to humanity. Like this is happening there. What I mean by that is there's the alien agenda, right? The non-human intelligence, right? The UAP, the UFO phenomenon. You've got the fallen angels, the Nephilim. You've got the new world order, the deep state, right? The elites. You've got the new age Enlightenment agenda that's happening as well, but that's more of like kind of kept behind closed doors. People don't really want to talk about that too much, because I think it's really exposing the end goal that Lucifer has for humanity, right? And ever since I got saved, I've been a really big revelation guy. Like, I've really been into revelation. As soon as I got saved, I was just almost obsessive over prophecy. I was like, dude, because, when I got saved 16, 17 years ago now, there was a lot of things that happened just before that, right? There was 9/11, there was all of these other crazy things. I mean, it's just so much. Alex Jones, right, was kind of, which we'll talk about Alex Jones, by the way, because I think he's falling into one of these deceivers. I think he's someone that's pushing an agenda that will ultimately push humanity to the end goal of where Lucifer wants humanity to go. But Alex Jones was really popular, exposing a lot of the satanic agenda, all of these things, right? There's so much truth to all of this, but really, what's the ultimate goal, right? Like, what's the ultimate Hegelian dialectic for humanity, right? We're all being faced with a problem right now. We're all being faced with, there's just so much chaos, a lot of chaos magic going on, a lot of Discordianism, a lot of goddess worship, a lot of all kinds of crazy stuff that people are really just listening to other people at this point. Um, and I'm not even saying for people to listen to me, but I'm seeing I'm seeing the playing field for what it really is, right? There's a lot of people out there right now, like Alex, and this isn't me dissing anybody, right? This is me saying what I really think they're purposely doing. And if they're not purposely doing it, then they're ignorant to it, but they're still led by a spirit, right? And it's the spirit of the world that has nothing to do with God. Like we see all of these advocates pushing to expose evil, but they don't talk about the gospel. They don't talk about Jesus. They might briefly mention it a little bit, but they're not Christians. They're not saved people. Maybe they are, but if they were, they would be, you know, bringing that full circle into topics that is that they discuss. Um, so tonight we're going to get into Edgar Cayce. Who's Edgar Cayce, and pretty much what's he known for, right? And what did he talk about? And when we see these people, right, especially like Joe Rogan, biggest podcast platform in the entire world, right? a huge advocate for ancient civilizations, huge advocate for psychedelics, a huge advocate for what I see as the future. Um, you know, I think the future looks it's going to look good. Out of this chaos is going to birth a phoenix, right? It's kind of like the Hindu god Kali, right? The transformation of humanity I feel is coming, which ultimately it's uh it's an enlightenment out of all the chaos. And I compare a lot of this to Tower of Babel. I compare a lot of it to where what the people talked about by forming the tower, what Genesis 11 really kind of shows you is happening, that it ultimately was a decision from the people, right? That they were wanted to come together as one, lest they be scattered, lest they go back to how the world was in chaos. They needed to emerge and enlighten themselves. And really, one way to do that, and most likely to honor their God as well, was to build a tower, right? To reach the heavens. Um, there were something to do with knowledge in this scenario. Now, I'm not going to be someone here that says I know it all. I don't know it all. And a lot of the things that I'm going to talk about in regards to the Tower of Babel is that it's not in the Bible per se. It's more of a lot of kind of intuition based off of what I've seen going around, what I've researched, and what I hear the world saying. It presents itself. It's almost personifying itself that Atlantis is going to make a full circle back around. So the biggest thing with Atlantis is that it was an antediluvian civilization, right? I got Gary Wayne coming on in the next couple days. Well, tomorrow actually. I'm going to ask him some questions about Atlantis, right? I think this episode would be a good it would be a good forerunner for tomorrow's episode. You know, Gary too, in past episodes, he even told me that basically, the harlot Revelation 17, that this is kind of, it looks like an Atlantean empire. And I think that that's what the harlot can contribute to in some sort of way, right? The harlot is a city sitting on 7 mountains, 7 hills, right? It's you know, sitting on many waters, right? These waters are multitudes. It's the whole earth. Um, the 10 kings, right, fornicate with her, which makes me think of the 10 kingdoms of Atlantis. So, if this was an antediluvian period, if this was an antediluvian civilization in this time, I think it's very interesting when we see Jesus saying that the end days would be like unto the days of Noah. Now, Jesus was specific, right, in what he was meaning there, but was he also kind of alluding to something else? Was he also saying that, hey, just as it was before the flood, so won't it be with the coming of the Son of Man? So is Atlantis going to make its way around to be this new age world order that emerges from the new world order? People come to the assumptions that the new world order are the elites. The new world order is the dominion and the powers and the strongholds that all of this deep state has over humanity. And I'd argue that I'd say that is a new world order, but that's not the real new world order that's coming. The real new world order that's coming is going to be this new age world order that Alice Bailey talks about, right? What's being exposed right now is a lot of the dark forces of the mystery schools to cause a problem reaction solution that the people go through initiation of information, pretty much, And then they end up moving to the New Age world order of enlightenment, of spirituality, the sixth, the seventh root race of theosophy. That this is kind of like the last stages of evolution of mankind, according to Blavatsky, you know, who created theosophy. So I wanted to kind of lay that into the beginning of the show because I think it's going to complement everything else that we get into. But real quick, I'm going to turn my head over to the chat. What is up, everybody? Good to see everyone. I hope everyone's having a blessed day. And it is a good day for me. And what's up, Craig? What's up, Lattice? What's up, Catherine? Good to see you. Dunt, as always. Neff Hunter, what up, yo? What's up? Hey, I watched some of that video. I don't agree with that guy, man. I don't agree with it. I think that Proverbs and the Holy Spirit is personified as a woman. It's not a woman. And he had some interesting points, but then again, it's like, can we just look at the Bible for our justification with certain things, right? Can we just go to the Word of God and just meditate on that and you know and stay true to that? I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. I'm not saying I know everything, but it's something that Satan's theology, Satan's mystery religion is it's a counterfeit, it's inverted, and it mimics the Word of God. Um, it's not the same as the Bible. It will never ever be the same. But he wants to be like God. I think it's very interesting that Lucifer masquerades himself as an angel of light, which we're going to cover tonight too, because this is something that deals with Atlantis. What was the discord between the two groups of Atlantis? What did Cayce say that he recorded from the Akashic records about Atlantis? And really, it comes down to two groups: the Sons of Law of One versus the Sons of Belial. Now, I even think that in Revelation, that true Christians, the elect, will be, according to the narrative of the world, will be persecuted for being evil, just like they did to Jesus. They thought the spirit of Beelzebub was in Jesus. Okay. The Pharisees thought he was demonic and evil and ultimately a heretical blasphemer, which is ultimately like some sort of probably a damnable heresy to even say that about him. But he pushed through it. He he got beat up. He didn't back down from saying who he was. He got turned into the councils, just like Matthew 24 talks about, right? He carried that cross half dead almost, and completed the will of the Father. Amen. So shout out to Jesus Christ, our Lord and Savior. You know what I'm saying? It was the Neff Hunter, it was that like 2.5 hour, 3 hour broadcast that one guy did. I think it was like 2 years ago or something. Yeah, to your question. So there's a lot of people out here in the podcast world, the showbiz, talk show radio, on and on and on, right? Basically the new newspaper. But like people don't read the newspaper anymore. They listen to shows, they listen to podcasts, they listen to people talking on microphones. One of these guys pushing this Atlantean agenda is dark journalists. Got people like Alex Jones pushing it. There's many others out there that are, in a way, using their platforms to constantly berate or barrage, or whatever the word is. They're like a B-52 bomber just dropping bombs on the deep state, New World Order, and all this stuff. But that's going to instigate something from humanity. That's going to instigate what Alice Bailey talks about is like this great enlightenment that comes and sparks within humanity, and everyone self realizes that uh, we need to enlighten spiritually and to remove ourselves from these powers. And so that's going to happen. It's going to happen. Alex Jones streams for like over 12 hours a day with over 150,000 people watching him throughout the entire day, right? And the duration of people watching his show is only about probably 15 minutes, 20 minutes, and then they dip. So it's like 150 times 150 times 150,000 times. Like there's millions of people watching this guy. And I've watched interviews of dark journalists going on, and specifically, he's the one that really brought some of this to my attention too, where, Cayce's work. And then I started digging into Cayce's work. Then I started to see how he was carrying the message about Cayce. And then I started to see dark journalists also talking about, UFOs. Why is he talking about UFOs? Well, Cayce talks about UFOs. Cayce talks about these things that were a part of the Atlantean civilization. That these UFOs are technology that are ultimately operated by crystal technology, and that now that I'm digging into Steiner's work, right? Like Steiner also tapped into the Akashic records, got this information. He's even saying that the way these technologies were operated was off life force energy, and then boom, that brought me that. I mean, I study the goddess, and if we look at just the allegorical perspective of Isis, with the queen bee concept, and uh, that she was the mother of all living, that there's so many strings that you can connect to life force energy and the goddess. You can see it even within Eastern mysticism and practices of the occult, that they meditate and they connect with this divine source. And so that's the whole point of everything happening right now, is to move humanity through the great awakening map back and forth, and they're shimmying you up to the end destination of it, which is to connect to divine source, which I believe to be Venus, I believe to be Lucifer, I believe to be the harlot, I believe that this is something humanity is literally going to think this is God. Like, it's kind of interesting. And therefore the elect would be persecuted tremendously. Like father would turn against son. Like Christians are going to fight amongst each other. Like, why is the NAR movement paralleling so well with, just their seven mountain mandate and the seven rays of Alice Bailey, the seven roots and the seven spears of theosophy? They're all the same thing. They're just a different organization, a different name, dude. But they're pushing the same agenda. It's the same food, different taste, if that makes sense. Um, so pretty much we'll get into it. Edgar Cayce, right? Early 1900s, a clairvoyant, a man who had very interesting abilities at a very young age. Uh, at this young age, he suffered from certain ailments. One of these things was that he wasn't really, he kind of lost his voice. He kind of almost became mute, someone that was just not talkative because there was something going on. But he he tried to get involved with getting this fixed, and so he went to multiple different doctors, this that, went to a hypnotist tried to work on him, and tried to fix the problem. And the hypnotist didn't work, right? The that occult practice seemed not to get anywhere. And so Cayce, with these abilities that he had at such a young age, where he can go into these trances, he had kind of like these psychic abilities, and he claimed to be a Christian later, when he grew up, but he's not. I think the furthest thing from a Christian. He was a Christian mystic. He was an occultist, and he was like, I think I can do what the hypnotist is doing, but I could do it even better. So he then goes ahead and goes into these trances and he goes into these states, right? These hypnotic, these meditative states to where he a voice spoke out of him. And I remember he was mute, he couldn't talk. And this voice spoke out, and it wasn't his voice. Um, if anything, it was a different voice. Like it was a deep voice to the people that were in the room. And when he spoke, the voice spoke through him saying what the problem was, and that it pointed out the issue medically, that there was something up with his vocal cords and yada yada yada. He ended up going and getting the medical practice to be able to fix it, and he healed himself. I don't think he healed himself. I think through demonic influences he was aided to be healed. And so these demonic forces, I think he just started fornicating with it. I think he honestly thought it was of God, which is what a lot of these clairvoyants and a lot of these occultists believe at the end of the day, that a lot of the metaphysical forces and practices that they're able to entertain and play with, at some point they think it's some fraction of God. So he got into the medical field, right? He got into the medical field and he became very involved in holistic medicine. And he was able to get into these trances, and he was able to get into these meditative states and connect to whatever it is he was connecting to, probably what he believed to be a divine source. And he had even the ability to heal people, uh, even just by talking to them on the phone, right? Like you're th- hundreds to thousands of miles away, and you're able to heal someone by not even being in the same state. I mean, if not the same area code, which is kind of an incredible thing. Um, and so a lot of his main parts of his work was that he was able to connect into what's known as the Akashic records. It's basically like, if you were to think, if time is linear, if time is like a straight line, right? That's a physical part of reality, but then there's a metaphysical part of reality that would be a memory of that time. And that's what like the Akashic records are pretty much. And he was able to, you know, with his consciousness go into that memory. And which, I've had Seth Kicklighter on the show. I've had many people on the show where they lay out their information explaining that these are theatrical illusions, by demonic forces that ultimately influence the user being the one playing with with this information, being fed this information, right? Um, Linking their consciousness to other spiritual consciousness, and getting information from it. Um, so when he's in these Akashic records, he's actually I got like a hair on my nose. I don't know what it is. When he's in these Akashic records, he's seeing basically clips, visions, and segments of history. And one of the main things of his work was his description of Atlantis. And so there's a lot of people, and I'll read some of their names today, but there's so many people that we've listened to, that we've probably advocated before to, that we've supported, that are, I don't know, Atlantean enthusiasts. Like they see Casey's work, and they see what Casey said about Atlantis almost like it's biblical to them. And it honestly kind of is in some sort of way. It's like the worldly nature, right? Like it's all ran by Satan and Lucifer. And so the people are following the lusts of their flesh, the lusts of the desires of their heart, and the lusts of their mind, and they're falling into these mysteries. Um and Before I get to some of the names, and kind of just to talk about where we're at in archaeology, where we're at with some of these advocates of the mainstream archaeology versus more of like the esoteric aspects of the archaeology and what this has to do with Cayce. I just want to kind of turn to the chat. What's up, y'all? What's up? What's going on? Hey, Anika. Good to see you. What up, Barrett? Yeah, dude, I got like a hair. My dog jumped up on my face before I got on the show. And I'm pretty she's got like tight little curly hair. He's a golden doodle that can't wait to go run on a big piece of property here soon. So hopefully we're a couple weeks out with the house. I can't wait for that. What's up, Luke? What's going on, everybody? Good to see you. What up, KK? uh Bryce, hey, good to see you. What's up, Kelly? And Neff Hunter. Always good to see you, brother. Mama Lucia, what's up? Cho Brown, yo, what up, cuz? So okay, right? I left off pretty much of like what where we at here? Who are the people pushing this narrative, and what's the mainstream archaeology versus the esoteric archaeology? I've done streams on some of these people. I'll just kind of start with the esoteric, Atlantean agenda advocates. These are people going on and you know what? There might be something to Atlantis. Like this, most likely was probably there's something to it. Now, I do think it's psyop. It could be something of a false doctrine, of a fable that is to lead the world into an illusion. But when we look at the antediluvian period, there's a few things that happen, right? There's obviously like we've got the bloodlines are separate, right? Don't mix with this one. This one don't mess with that one, right? Cain's bloodline versus the Setite bloodline. You've got the sons of God, right? Come down, copulate with human women. A lot of things going on, right? And then obviously, boom, right after that, there was violence in those days. There was evil in man's heart entirely. And so I think that was attempt number one for Lucifer trying to perform his own agenda to migrate humanity to believing in a false light. And how that would happen is that he would send his fallen angels to go down and copulate with human women, create Nephilim hybrids, right? Which we'll get to who those are to Cayce's work. But this would be an evil force. This would be like what we see today with the New World Order, the deep state, the elites, right? These evil forces that are kind of using technology. And we know that, right, the fallen angels kind of like taught mankind certain things, at least from just cultural perspectives, right? This is what falls in line with their theology. That they were influencing humanity to do evil things and to use probably most likely technology to perform evil things. And what happened there, I think, is that humanity was living amongst this, and it's just like where we're at today. We can see the quantum dot tattoos. We can see Bill Gates. We can see Elon Musk, Neuralink. We could see a lot of these things on the horizon that can ultimately control humanity. And so I think in the antediluvian period, this is something that the fallen angels were advocates for, but on purpose. It was all part of an illusion. It was all part of Lucifer's plan to be that divine source that humanity would run to, right? Almost like a savior out of that chaos. So it's almost like Lucifer would even set up his own fallen angels so that humanity runs to him as the light, as this divine source, as the law of one. And I think that's very cunning. Like, I think that's a brilliant idea. If Lucifer wanted to be worshiped as God, that would be something that he would definitely try to pull off. But it didn't get completed, right? Like God came and flooded the earth and he destroyed it all before it could most likely get to that point. And so after the flood, you have Ham, right? One of the sons of Noah, Ham, Cush, Nimrod, Babylon, and then you have again now you have the world coming together as one, um and then God destroyed that again. So it's kind of like that scenario there was almost trying to repeat what was almost happening in the antediluvian period. But every time this happens, or it gets very close to happening, God comes and like pours judgment and stops it from happening. Ultimately, because I think, people will really believe that this is God, right? Because Lucifer is this light. Lucifer is, he's not his true nature, but he is expressing himself all the time like he is this light. He's the ultimate creation of like duality. And he did it to himself, right? Pride, all these things. He's of good and of evil. So he can create, he can instigate evil, he can manipulate evil to manipulate the psyche of the human mind so people then would go to light or go to the good, but that's a part of his nature too. So that's kind of like where I'm getting at with all of this. um so the mainstream versus the esoteric side of things, some of the esoteric names, pretty familiar with some of these. Graham Hancock. Graham Hancock was a guy who he's a huge advocate for the Ice Age civilization. Um, that these are ideas often linked to Atlantis. These are people now that I think believe in the Atlantean mysteries like it's their Bible, and they're going to fight to the tooth and nail. They're going to literally fight to the death to really try and bring back this Atlantean wisdom, this Atlantean knowledge, so that humanity can live like how the Atlanteans did, like how the group called the Law of One lived with this technology. And when you look at where we're at on a technological standpoint, we're super advanced. I don't know how that came to be, but it seems like Atlantis is like coming back around. If Atlantis was a super intelligent, super technologically advanced society, uh, thousands of years ago, pyramids are built, megalithic structures around the world. They were in tune with something. They had this certain set of knowledge to do these things, and I think we're getting there. Um, Randall Carlson is another guy, right? He's an advocate for a cataclysm that happens pretty much at the end of these cycles. He's a guy who has gone on Joe Rogan's show plenty of times with Graham Hancock, advocating for the Younger Dryas impact theory and all of these things. But I guarantee you this: you'll start to see him walk back from that, and he'll go more towards like volcanic eruptions and volcanic manipulated activity is what actually caused the cataclysm 10,500, 13,500 years ago or whatever, right? Which ultimately destroyed Atlantis, which is ultimately blamed on the sons of Belial. And we'll get to the sons of Belial, we'll get to the sons of the Law of One and all that because it's super important. Edgar Cayce was another one, an advocate for Atlantis, right? If not, he's one of the biggest modern Atlantis influencers like in our time, right? Within the past 100 years, 100%. He's the guy who's definitely influenced even Randall Carlson and Hancock. You have Joe Rogan, who's platformed Atlantis slash, lost civilization conversations, right? He loves this stuff. And like I said, he's the biggest podcaster in the entire world. Jimmy Corsetti's another guy. You even have Timothy Alberino going on shows uh, talking about Atlantis and Enoch. And you've got people like Billy Carson and David Wilcock, right, who just passed away. But these people only have one thing in common with their entire narrative. And the one thing that they have in common is that they only are talking about one group specifically with all of their work, with all of their exposure, and with everything that they're talking about. It's only exposing one group of the Atlantean civilization. And that's the sons of Belial. Like I said, it's because they want to instigate humanity to move to the sons of the law of one, which I think will be like this harlot figure in the future. Because there's just so many connections to the divine goddess. It's not even funny with the law of one. Um, so these are people, right, in the esoteric community that are trying, that are paying lots of money. I mean, filthy amounts of money, dude. Like filthy, filthy amounts of money to dig and to listen to and to go back pretty much to people like Steiner, Blavatsky, and even Plato and also Cayce, where they want to dig in certain areas that where these people had certain predictions of where they would find some sort of hidden knowledge that would basically, once it's found, it would enlighten humanity. You know, Casey also talked about where I think it was in the 21st century that this would be a time when humanity would come across this Atlantean knowledge. You know, we'll get into the Sphinx, we'll get into the Giza Plateau, we'll get into all of that kind of stuff, right? That in the last past year has really been made very popular. I mean, what's up with the SAR radar picking up things under the Giza Plateau? This is all a narrative and all agenda to push people to be curious. Number one, once they're curious, then if they're revealed something, they're just going to eat the bait right away. People won't really critically think in these moments. Mainstream researchers of ancient civilizations, these are pretty much, you know, people that study ancient cultures and sites. Um, you know, they have the credentials to do these things. One of these archaeologists is Zahi Hawass, right? He's pretty much the main guy who dictates what happens on the Giza Plateau. Like he's got all of the power. Now you'll see dark journalists talking about him as like this gatekeeper. He's keeping he's restricting humanity from finding this hidden knowledge and hidden Atlantean information that Casey pretty much predicted in the 1920s. Um, you know, and so you know you've got people like Robert Schoch too. Robert Schoch is a guy who, honestly, he's the guy who dictated the water erosion on the Sphinx, and that it didn't date back to what mainstream archaeology was claiming. Because mainstream archaeology says that the pyramids were built in the dynasty period. I think it was from 2500 to 4000 BCE or something like that, which doesn't make sense to the Atlantean narrative. The Atlantean narrative says that these things were built roughly around 10,500 BC or before that, in the antediluvian period, right? When humanity had this intense set of wisdom and was able to do these certain things. But I think they were able to do these things because they were practitioners of the occult. I think they were practicing the occult. And I think that, which that's, biblically, that's bad. I'm just going to be super dumb here. That's bad, right? We're not called to partake in the occult. We're not called to mess with it. We're not called to do anything with it, because ultimately I think it's to save us from not only deception and illusions, but to save us from us believing that we're our own God. And I think that that's what the occult really ends up doing to people. That you end up thinking, yeah, like I can do these crazy, I am like God. I can do these crazy things, metaphysical practices and all this. I can manipulate the subphysical world. What? Lies, bro. Lies. You guys, you feel me? You know what I'm saying? Um, yeah. I want to play. I figure it's a good time since I pretty much said that. We'll play a little video here, and this is Dark Journalist. Hey man, listen, I'm not plagiarizing your work. I don't know if anyone's on X and they've seen recently that him and was it Jesse Michaels are kind of going back and forth. He's like saying Jesse Michaels stole all of his work and all this. It's like, dude, I mean, if you're talking about it, people are going to pick it up and they're going to use it. It just is what it is. We don't have to complain about it. You know, unless I don't know, you have a patent for it, dude, then we have an issue then. But legally, I just don't. I just think it's all just more chaos magic, just back and forth on X. It's just wild. It's all Discordianism. It's all goddess worship of Eris to the Greeks, in my opinion. And we're seeing that clear as day. I'm seeing it clear as day. I don't know if anyone else is, but it's completely obvious. I have Austin Pickard coming on the show Saturday night, and we're going to talk about Discordianism. We're going to talk about chaos magic. We're going to talk about all of the propaganda and the psyops that are at play here. And it's really wild. Jesse, dude, is shady though. Yeah, I get that. They're all shady. Every single one of these people are shady. Don't fall into the this guy, that guy, the paradigm between. They're all shady. They're all honestly working for like the same source, in my opinion. I think it's hilarious because it's all theater, dude. It's all theater. It really is, man. It's wild. You know, Lucifer was in charge of like worship, right? But seems like he knows he knows how to film and direct. It's funny. So I'll share this up on the screen. Hope everyone's having a good day. I'm having a blast. Let's go. Much love to everybody in here. Thank you, Lord, for saving my soul. My kid was singing Jesus music today. It was actually really awesome. Really awesome. Rejoice in the Lord always. Rejoice in the Lord always. Be there for each other. Encourage one another. Get the gospel of Jesus Christ out there as much as possible right now because it's wild. It's such a wicked world. And not only is it so wicked filled with sin, but it's so wicked with where people want humanity to go. Like this false light is going to look really good, and it's really sad that it's really sad how many people are going to fall into it, into this deception, man. It's wild. All right, I'll play this out.
Here's why I call it Giza Gate, and it's
so this is Dark Journalist talking about his term that it's like he patented this thing, Giza Gate, right? And that's kind of where I was talking about earlier with Hawass and kind of the restrictions that they have for excavation and digging and all these things. Because Cayce says that there's a hall of records underneath the right paw of the Sphinx that he dropped into this trance. He got into the Akashic record and he said it will be for a future generation to come upon these things. And when they do come upon these things, it'll bring in the pretty much a whole, it'll be the world gospel. It'll be Lucifer's gospel. It'll point to the origins of creation. It'll point to what civilization was like, what civilization worshipped in the antediluvian period. It's going to make humankind come into their cosmic memory of who they were. It's going to talk about reincarnation. It's going to talk about all these things. You really aren't really who you are. You're like, someone else back in the past. That's why you have these little flashbacks of memories and these things and deja vu, and it's going to be wild. This is going to be the occult brought into the mainstream of humanity.
Very interesting winding labyrinth of a story, but I'll try to sum it up this way. There's a group in America who supports the Cayce research work, and they support and spend lots of money on archaeological digs in places like Egypt to prove Cayce's theory. So one of the things that they did is they put two very interesting people through college and placed them in Cairo to be their men in Cairo who would get the real story for them, so it would support Cayce's work.
So real quick, I want to point out too some of the symbolism that I saw and why these things are actually flashed behind these two people in this interview. And you have a pentagram. It looks like you have an AI robot. All these things. This plays into Cayce's work where he talks about the sons of Belial. And Dark Journalist barely barely mentions the sons of the Law of One in this episode. Barely. He mentioned it for a brief moment. And all he did was talk about the sons of Belial and compare it to the workers in humanity today, what Elon Musk is doing, that all these people are actually following philosophies of a different group of the Atlantean civilization. And I think that's because it's a part of his job to ultimately bring in that curiosity of what the other group is so that humanity runs that way on their own.
And his predictions and all the rest of it. One of those characters was Zahi Hawass. The other one was Mark Lehner. Lehner was a high school dropout. And the Cayce Foundation was like, you're very interested in this stuff. We think you'd be good. They put him through college. They did the whole thing. Hawass, also, the Cayce Foundation said, we'll put you through Cairo University, University of Pennsylvania, all these other places. So they did. They paid for it. So these guys go over there. They know all about the Cayce readings. They've spent time. They're close to the Cayce family. They go over there in the 1990s, and they become kind of the big shots. They control the Giza Plateau. They rise in the ranks. Little by little, they start making it very difficult to do digs anywhere around the Sphinx or the pyramid, and they publicly trash the theories that Cayce was put out about Atlantis and all the rest. They're like, there's no evidence of an ancient culture. Forget about it.
Just remember that image in the background, because look at the thumbnail, right? When you look at the thumbnail of the show, which I'll bring up a picture of it here after this, it's just constantly pushing so much focus on these dark forces of humanity, which will lead humanity to the ultimate deception, which is that false light.
So what happens is Hawass joins the Mubarak government, and they make him the Minister of Antiquities. And he throws all of these archaeologists out, and he starts doing these deals where they're $1 million deals with National Geographic and all the rest, where he invites them in to look at this, and he's the curator, and they do all these stories about him as Indiana Jones and all this stuff. In the meantime, Lehner is saying, oh yeah, all the Cayce stuff was wrong, and it's traditional dating. It just, the pyramid's 2500 BC, and there's nothing here, nothing to look at. Now, there's a geologist who's also from BU, Robert Schoch, a great researcher, and he realized that there was a weathering pattern on the Sphinx that was rain-based. It was a water weathering pattern. The problem is there hasn't been rain in Egypt since 10,500 BC. You have to go all the way back there to get it. So he's like, the weathering pattern shows the Sphinx, the age of the Sphinx is 10,500 BC. And then he said, I don't know anything about Edgar Cayce or whatever, but I can tell you for sure that this is it. So this is the battle that's gone on for 20 years. And a number of people have been involved, Robert Belial, Graham Hancock, and others. And they always had this iron gate to go up against, trying to get more information about Cayce's Hall of Records. Now, that group, Lehner and Hawass, know all about the Hall of Records. They know all about the Cayce readings. And they even get the Cayce Foundation, even though they publicly trashed Cayce, they get the Cayce Foundation to continue to fund digs around the Sphinx and all the rest. The thing that they've done with the information is they've searched for the artifacts. This is part of the archaeology wars. They've looked for the Hall of Records. They've looked for the Atlantean stuff. They have not shared it with the ARE, with the public, or anything. These are the Cayce Foundation people. They put them there. And what I think is fascinating about these guys is they're still not Lehner anymore. He's not around active. But Hawass, he's the first guy who came out and said, the space radar story can't be true. Egyptians built this pyramid. It's not based on an ancient culture before the Egyptians. And he's the one who's coming out and saying, I'm going to push back against these other scientists that are coming out against this. So there's an incredible block there. But if you look at the Mubarak government, Mubarak, he was in prison for many years for all the corruption, and he took Hawass into his cabinet. And Hawass, they had a number of cases against Hawass, bribery and all these other things. So you have a very corrupt situation there managing this ancient artifacts and the ancient civilization and the human origin story. So that's a big problem. And I think it goes deep, and I think that they need characters like that to deflect the public around what the actual age of the Sphinx and the pyramids are.
There it is, right? The human origin story, what civilization was like before the cataclysm. Who caused the cataclysm? Oh, it was this one group of people, right? And with that group, you can easily fit the fallen angels and the Nephilim in that group, right? But like I said earlier in the show, I think this was something that Lucifer did purposely to deceive humanity to go towards him as this false light. And so if Jesus is saying that in those days, right, it would be like unto the days of Noah, right? Then, so will be the coming of the Son of Man. Satan's going to come and do that same playbook. And I think that that's why we have the alien narrative. I think that's why we've got disclosure coming right around the corner. And hear me out, right? I think disclosure is going to express that these forces, these non-human intelligences are actually in cahoots with the government, controlling the government, suppressing humanity, keeping humanity in this prison planet state, doing all this stuff, right? So that it'll be perfect timing when there's that war in heaven in Revelation 12, and Satan and his fallen angels are casted completely out of heaven, right? And to the earth, that now we will then see this form of Avengers come out of the earth, right? And be amongst man. And not that they're superheroes, but that they're false Christ, that these are like what Alice Bailey talks about with the externalization of the hierarchy, where these Christs will rise and they will be amongst man and actually start showing mankind how to combat that other group of society, because they're holding you back from spiritual enlightenment. They're holding you back from ascension. They're holding you back from becoming connected with divine source, all of this stuff. And how cunning is that for Lucifer to do that? Because he knows that Jesus and his angels are actually coming. Like he knows that God's coming to judge the world. And it kind of falls in line with what Werner von Braun and his associate, what he said to her on his deathbed. He's like, the last card that they're going to pull is that there's an alien threat to society and that we need to go to war against it. I think it's very interesting that there's some connections with the externalization of the hierarchy, right? Where these Christ figures, these ascending master figures will appear here on earth. And will do signs and miracles that, if it were even possible, it would deceive the very elect. Now, why would it deceive the elect? It would deceive the elect because these people are coming off as ministers of light and righteousness and holiness, the law of one. You feel me? I'll continue this. There's actually a wicked occult picture here.
With the space radar story, that story is going to be undeniable scientific fact for this. So then these people over here who are controlling access and maybe have been digging for that Cayce information and digging for this stuff for their own governments, for their own corruption, I can't tell you how much money is in archaeology. If you could, go back and find King Tut's tomb back in the day, that became this incredible thing. But every discovery of a temple or whatever it happens to be, it's television specials, books, and everything else. So there's a whole system that feeds itself on keeping that story going. And if the kind of third rail is talking about Atlantis or Cayce or any of that stuff, you can't go near it because you've built up this whole scientific thing. If you start talking about there's a civilization back there and it was more advanced than we are, that's a real big problem.
And we all know egos,
Exactly. That's Giza Gate, because they're Cayce people. And it's funny, because tonight I brought the book that Lena wrote about Cayce and all of records, and I'll show that to you when we're done. But, just to show that these people know all.
he brought the book like it's a Bible. I'm telling you, dude, this is an Atlantean narrative that we're seeing with everything happening in the world right now. It's literally falling in line with bringing Atlantis back, yo. But ultimately, they want to bring in the law of one, right? What's being exposed right now before Atlantis gets here, before that knowledge, that stuff under the Sphinx, right, the Hall of Records gets here, they're doing their greatest job to expose the sons of Belial, because this is timed. This is a timed event that's happening, and it's on time, purposely. Every single thing. Look at the Epstein files. Look at everything that's being exposed in the world right now. Everyone thinks they're figuring it all out, but really it's information that's been given to us for us to parrot so that other people parrot it. And so then it goes and it spreads along the collective consciousness of humanity. And then now everyone has the same idea. It's coming. You heard it first. The biblical hitman. Let's go.
All about, Cayce's supposed to be some far out guy who's like, some crazy psychic predictions, forget about it. And yet, there they are, being funded through universities, going there on Cayce scholarships and trashing his work in the meantime. So that, for me, is Gizagate. There's a lot of corruption levels going on there. And those two people should be called out professionally for taking the money on one side and fighting it on the other. And they're very happy to trash his work.
Just amazing.
Isn't it funny too that his name is Dark Journalist? Like all he does is expose like these dark things. What's he want you to go to? He wants you to go to the false light. Oh, goodness gracious. Something I just wanted to play. You heard it from him. And yeah, and another thing too that's being talked about a lot, right? Is this age of Aquarius, right? Like, what is age of Aquarius? What does it kind of mean? Well, according to the New Agers, the Theosophists and stuff, it's when they believe a Christ figure comes into the world to lead humanity out of the chaos. And so just before you get these ages that are known as golden ages, right? It's funny how Trump says all these things. They know exactly what they're doing. When just before humanity goes into these golden ages, there's a part of the age just before that is like this crashing, this chaotic, pretty much like this age of chaos and destruction. And then out of that comes like this new age. That's why it's called New Age. And this enlightenment period that comes out of all this. The lotus flower is a really good example of that. If anyone just has a second, go on your phone, type in lotus flower occult. And that is their ultimate goal. That's what's on the Denver airport murals. That's why the rainbow's on there. That's why the lotus flower has a shaman over it, and then the whole world's like fornicating with it. That's why ibogaine just got legalized. That's why mushrooms are the next thing to get legalized. That's why drugs are way more easily accessible for humanity now without a drug dealer. It's to get humanity to shift their consciousness to an ascending and an enlightening path. And so, one thing that Graham Hancock says a lot in his book too, he's like the precession of the equinox and all of this, that many believe the world is transitioning from like the age of Pisces to the age of Aquarius. This cycle, based on the slow wobble of Earth's axis, takes roughly 2,160 years per sign. And what's funny is when they have that numerical number there, 2,000 roughly, right? We'll just estimate it at 2,000. And they'll go back and they'll say, "Oh, see, Jesus was a Christ, and he was 2,000 years ago. So we're due for another Christ." And that's why you've got people out there that are like, dude, like it feels like revelation in this piece. Like it feels like Antichrist is amongst us, right? Because they're trying to bring in their God, and their God will be the one that leads us to this false light, this enlightenment. The Antichrist is also going to claim that he is God. And the whole world's going to marvel and worship this person. I mean, he even fornicates with a strange God. Like, what's that mean? He honors the God of forces. What's that mean, yo? A lot of divine feminine is attached to this. There's a lot of divine feminine attached to this, as it should, because in their cultures, in their mythologies, throughout the whole world, everything else that is other than Christianity worships the goddess and her son slash consort. And there you have a counterfeit godhead that the world's also been worshiping. And therefore it'll come here to existence when all of this starts coming together, playing out. You got Bledsoe talking about the lady, and that he says the lady's going to stop everything, and not stop everything, but she's going to appear herself to the world as a knowledge when missiles start firing from Israel and all the nations around it. Why does this revolve around Israel, yo? That there is like the end of an age cataclysm, where out of the chaos, all of the messiahs, the Mahdis, the Mashiachs, the Kalki, all of the cultures' messiahs are going, not all of them, there will just be one, but they all believe in the same thing, is going to emerge out of that. There's some weird connections with this stuff. So I figured it's a good time. Let me just I want to just show let's bring up a photo pretty much of some of the things. Now, I typed all this out and into Chat GPT, and I actually had Chat GPT. It made it really well. It made it really well. I'll throw this up on the screen. Hopefully it it's kind of small writing, but hopefully y'all can see it. Maybe I should download it. I don't even know if I can. Maybe I can. But I'll throw this up on the screen. What's up, everybody? Good to see you. Because I have some connections here with Atlantis and the Harlot, and how I ended up reading the Harlot in Revelation 17. I decided to read it, and I decided to draw it out exactly how I was reading it. Like if I could illustrate it on a piece of paper, how would that look? And I was meditating on the word of God. I've never been so into my research and studies. It was like had to be like 1:30 in the morning. My wife was pissed. Didn't come to bed. Forgive me, Britt. but I'm asking God to try and show me some of these things that I feel need to be talked about. People need to hear and see kind of like what I'm saying. So this is pretty much like Atlantis, right? Atlantis was one big civilization, but it had like a central hub location that everything in some sort of way feeded off of. If you could imagine this being like the harlot, right? That great city, yet all the kings of the world, the 10 kings fornicate with her. She sits on many waters. I can only think that the harlot may have some connections with the illustrations that we see from these clairvoyants of Atlantis. Now, it's not saying that they're right. I think the word of God is correct. So if I need to interpret Revelation 17 differently, and interpret it with the Bible, then so be it. But I just wanted to bring in some of these interesting connections. There was two groups in Atlantis. Um, and again, this probably is like really hard for y'all to see. Maybe I can let me see. Maybe I can do this one. All right, I'll just do this one. This is pretty simple, right? So you had two sections of Atlantis, right? Not two sections, but you had two groups. You had two different philosophies. You basically had like, just for example, right? Like Republican, Democrat, right? Like we there's no difference with how Casey's explaining this and with what we see today. But it's a little deeper than that. It's not political. It's not as political. Now, these were two sections of Atlantis, right? One section being the sons of the law of one that represented light, love, truth, harmony, service. Nowhere in there does it say Jesus Christ at all. And on the right, you see sons of Belial, right? Representing power, control, selfishness, deception, division. And what's being exposed right now is just this side, is just the sons of Belial. These are the only things that are being talked about. You've got huge platforms that are only focusing on these. All of the conspiracies on the Great Awakening map contribute to this side on the right. But if you look all the way in the top right corner of that Great Awakening map, it actually points you to the law of one, the divine source. This is going to look like God. And it's this that emerge. It's the sons of the law of one that in some sort of way emerge from this chaotic side. Right. And so because the bad perspective or the sons of Belial is so talked about right now, it's naturally going to push people to the sons of the law of one. But this is the ultimate deception. I actually want to show you here too that the symbol right here, right, for the when you actually Google it, the symbol for the law of one is known as the Ankh, and the Ankh is that Egyptian cross symbol that has a loop at the top for people to hold. But here on this image, it actually shows the star of Ishtar. And I do think, who's Ishtar? Who's Inanna? Who's Semiramis? Who's Rhea? Who's Kabeli? Who's Isis? Right? I can go on and on with this. That's the harlot. That is the harlot is an illustration of those goddesses. And ultimately, I do think the law of one is they worshipped the goddess. And we don't have that specific information, but I'll make a interesting connection here with why I think the law of one worshipped the goddess. And it all comes down to how did they use this technology? How were they able to power this kind of technology, right? They're both sides, Belial and Law of One, were both using the same technology. They had different uses for it. They had different ideas for it. They ultimately had different agendas for it. And so the sons of Belial, right? I'll just kind of do a little reading here of Casey's work. This is off of Casey's work here. But it says here, I tell you what, we'll start with this with the law of one. Let's do this. We'll do the children or the sons of the law of one. These were the spiritual idealists, the priests, the priestesses, and visionaries who upheld the law of one. The profound principle that all life is interconnected. That's a goddess parallel right there. That there is only one creator, God's source, and that every soul is a fragment of the divine oneness. That's Gnosticism right there. Okay. Also, when it says here that there is only one creator, that also comes from what I get with my research, where the goddess is the mother of all living. So there might be a parallel to that. They believed the purpose of existence was harmonious services to others, spiritual evolution, and the responsibility to use knowledge for the upliftment of all beings. In Atlantis's golden eras, they lived in temples of light, such as the Temple of the Sun or the Temple of Sacrifice, where they practiced healing, meditation, and group consciousness work. Using massive crystals, especially the terrible mighty crystal, or what's known as the Firestone. Also, this isn't in here, but it's also known as the Two-Eye Stone. Okay. Um, with this, right, they harnessed solar energy, stellar forces, and Earth's natural energies for benevolent ends, right? Using these things for good. What did I say earlier in the show? Listen, Satan is the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Sons of Law of One, sons of Belial. It's all under his umbrella. Okay. So when this comes, don't believe that it's God. That's what I'm trying to say, because it's going to look so good, but it's so bad inside. Um, so with these benevolent ends, with how they used the Firestone, it was used to power airships that glided through sky, sea, and land. There's your UFOs for you, folks. Enabling wireless communication and distant vision, right? Like early television or remote viewing. This ultimately provided free energy for lighting, heating, and travel, and even facilitated higher dimensional states for receiving guidance from the divine. They viewed advanced technology as a sacred tool for enlightenment and convenience, not domination. A key flashpoint in their philosophy involved the things strange semi-conscious automatons or subhuman projections. Some say early soul experiments that manifested as half-formed beings, sometimes with animal-like traits from genetic tinkering. The children of the Law of One saw these beings as souls in need of compassion and elevation. They sought to awaken their consciousness, free them from drudgery, and integrate them as equals. What are your thoughts with that? What are y'all's thoughts here with semi-conscious automatons or subhuman projections? It also says here um, that the law of one, right, the children of the law of one, that these beings, that they saw these beings as souls in need of compassion and elevation. That's kind of this stuff makes me think of like ET or alien stuff, getting involved in this and how they looked towards the aliens. Or, I mean, if these were some things that they created, maybe it's artificial intelligence in our reality today. So maybe humanity, because don't you see it, right? Don't you see how humanity is just constantly demonizing AI? That you could then see a group of people going, no, 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 we need to enlighten them, and they can help us. They can help us and ascend. That's wild. Um, Craig says, I think it was a pre-Adamic world, then the creation of days of 6 day mankind, and finally Adam. Yeah. The day six thing's interesting. Who knows? So I'll get right over here to the sons of Belial, right? The sons of Belial were in stark contrast, right, to the sons of the Law of One, and they ultimately stood. Uh, they were sometimes called children of Belial, and the Belial is like a demonic force name too, by the way. It's like almost Beelzebub or something like that. Um, and the sons of Belial, whose names echoes of the Hebrew term for worthlessness, lawlessness, or evil. Those who rebel against divine order, they rejected the law of one entirely, denying or ignoring the one creator in favor of self-worship. The creature rather than the creator became their creed. They pursued self-aggrandizement, material pleasure, power, and control above all else. Cayce described them vividly. The sons of Belial had no standard, save of self, and they had no moral code beyond gratifying selfish appetites. They turned the same crystalline and solar technologies into instruments of domination, weaponizing the firestone to concentrate destructive rays, tapping volcanic forces deep within the earth, creating explosives, mind control devices, and energy weapons. So we can see that, right, with like the deep state and the dominion powers that be in our world, right? These would, Elon Monk, Elon Musk. I mean, it just said they're mind control devices, right? So uh, he would kind of fall into this Sons of Belial group in our reality today. They built opulent temples that were beautiful buildings without, but temples of sin within, using hypnosis, drugs, coercion, and even genetic experiments to breed chimeric human animal hybrids for labor or amusement. There you go. There's the Nephilim agenda. There's where the Nephilim come in here, right? This is where this group now can start to get categorized, or at least the fallen angels can fit into this category, right? Genetic experiments to breed chimeric human animal hybrids and labor or amusement. Um, the things were their perfect slaves, kept ignorant, exploited for household labor, farming, and pleasure, with no thought of raising their consciousness. And this is kind of giving off a lot of Gnostic demiurge vibes as well, which they ultimately believe about. The Gnostics believe that's the God of the Bible. So you can see what's being played out here. This exploitation created extreme social stratification, a ruling elite lording over millions in a dystopian hierarchy. And that's why you get all of these people talking about just dystopian, dystopian, dystopian. The world's going to end. This, that. It's meant to amplify that idea so that people would just get pushed into the other idea, the other philosophy, how we can fix this. More of the Alice Bailey, the New Age side of these things, especially Barbara Marx Hubbard, right? Like her neo New Age philosophies and all these things. She even says in her neo New Age, papers and books and information that it's those of, she doesn't say this specifically, but if it's in the same category, those people that would fall under that Sons of Belial group, that they would needed to be they would needed to be like righteously killed and exterminated, so that they would be taken out of the way, so that humanity can go towards the law of one. Does that kind of sound like the pale horse? Does that kind of sound like something like that? I don't know. Very interesting to think of, right? Peace taken completely from the earth, war, death. Could be. Who knows? Casey said another thing here. He said, uh, pretty much he talked about the rising conflict and the fall of Atlantis. And pretty much it was because of the Sons of Belial ended up using the Firestone technology and destroyed civilization. And then civilization, see, this is where this is the lie, right? Where civilization destroyed itself. And it was like, no. Like God, see how they're fitting God in the Belial group? Because God is the one that caused the cataclysm. Casey's saying that it was the Belial group that caused the cataclysm. But, God flooded the earth. Every mountain was moved out of its place, right? Like he destroyed everything. Thank you, Lord. Needed to happen. So I found that interesting. I wanted to lay those two groups out on the table, pretty much. And so with that on the table, we have to get to Casey's work of the Hall of Records. You heard dark journalists talking about it, right? What really did Cayce say about this? And what generation is going to come upon this? Is it going to be in our lifetime? I think so. I think we're going to see some wild stuff come out of Egypt in just the next year. Um, Especially when you hear Chris Bledsoe talking about what he's saying about the Star of Regulus turning red, when the Sphinx is gazing at it, right, off to the east. This is when a new knowledge will come upon mankind. And that, what is that knowledge? That knowledge is wisdom. That knowledge is Lucifer. That knowledge is Venus. That knowledge is Sophia, right? You kind of picking up what I'm putting down here. When you look at the Giza Plateau, you have three temples there, pretty much, in my opinion. You've got three pyramids, one for the underworld, one for the material realm, one for the celestial realm. Because ultimately, I think those things were established based off of, Hermeticism. Because when you look at Hermeticism, how did that come into play? Well, you have Ham, right? The son that rebelled against his family, pretty much, the one of the three sons, and wanted to go back to how things were before the flood. And Ham, which is where we get the term Hermes from, from the Greeks. Ham had Cush, and Cush was one of the founders of Babylon. Cush has a lot of connections to Baal and Bel in the Bible. This is justified by historians of ancient Assyria and Babylonia and Nineveh and all of these things. And then ultimately you had Nimrod. Nimrod has a lot of parallels and strings connected to who's known as Ninus. Ninus is the husband of Semiramis, the divine feminine goddess of Nineveh. And this is where you also get later in the Bible of their son, Tammuz, right? So this is where now we get from, specifically to Alexander Hislop's information, where he talks about it in two Babylons, where you've got Nimrod, Semiramis, and Tammuz. Well, where am I getting at with this, with the Giza Plateau? So when you look at Semiramis, the divine feminine goddess, you look at Cybele, you look at Rhea, you look at the woman of Kaltahuyuk, you look at Venus of Willendorf, you look at pretty much a lot of these divine feminine goddesses, mother of the gods, that were worshipped by these different cultures. They're ultimately surrounded by something. If the woman of Kaltahuyuk is pretty much sitting on a throne with her arms on an armrest, looking like a really big bellied, fat Asian lady, right? Almost like an alien face in some sort of way. You've got the Minoan snake goddess, right? There's always, and you've got Rhea. Rhea being the Greek mother of the gods, right? The mother of Zeus. I believe it's Kronos that's her husband or her consort. Cybele, right? In the ancient Phrygian, Anatolian, Indo-European people, she had lions on her side. So there's always like there's something in the iconographies that show to be some sort of protection for the goddess. When you look at even just the Wailing Wall in Jerusalem, the Wailing Wall is known to house the spirit of Shekinah. When you look at Ishtar is known in the Babylonian times, where she was to dwell in the fortification. She was to be the god of the fortresses. right? In Daniel 11:38, you can see that the Antichrist honors the god of forces, fortresses. And so Daniel's pointing this out too. Daniel was in Babylon, right? Um, and so where am I getting with that? The goddess represents protection in some sort of way. It's done through beasts, it's done through walls, it's done through outposts and fortifications. It's ultimately the things that surround the perimeter of a city, which the harlot is a city. And when you look at the Giza Plateau, you can see that there's something that's being protected there. There's the three realms of existence according to their ideas and hermeneutics and all of this, um, where they also believe that this is the journey to ascension and enlightenment and to ultimately connect to divine source. um, you can see that there's a sphinx there, right? There's a sphinx there, and the sphinx, right, which the archaeologist Shock, right, he goes there and he's the one that dictates how old this sphinx is according to the water erosion that's around the sphinx. Well, he says it predates what Hawass is saying, the mainstream archaeologists. And so you'll get people like Matt LaCroix who will go on Danny Jones's podcast, Tinfoil Hat podcast. These guys need to get me on their podcast so I can actually refute some of this stuff. But they'll say that, which I agree with them here, that these sphinxes were not always, did not always have the head of a pharaoh. Actually, that was something that came into the timeline when the pharaohs were actually enlightened as these kings, right? They went through this process. I think they had some sort of connection to divine source, and therefore they started to uh, put their faces on the head of the sphinx. But originally, the head of the sphinx was a lion. It was a lion's head. When you look at Cabelli, you can see that she's on a chariot with lions pulling her. My main point is I think that what they were housing inside, what they were worshiping with these towers of Babel that they had, right? These pyramids, they were worshiping divine source in some way, to connect humanity to divine source, which then would make you your own god, or make you like a god. I don't know. I mean, I think it's very interesting that we can see from just in Exodus that uh, the Magi of the Pharaoh were able to throw their staffs down too and perform the power of God. Because Moses threw his staff down, turned into a snake, but that was because of the power of God. That wasn't because of Moses. Moses was not an occultist. That was the power of the Lord. But the Magi were able to replicate that. That's mind blowing. Here we go. We're circling back around to Genesis 11, where the Tower of Babel, all this stuff, where anything that they imagined to do, they were going to be able to do. So there's something there. Now, where this gets at with Cayce is Cayce says that there's a second Sphinx. But right now, there is no second Sphinx that we're able to see. So with the SAR radar that's come in the past last year, and people are going out there and spending a lot of money and performing these interesting tests, using these tools to be able to look under the ground without even having to pick up a grain of sand. They have found that there's a second Sphinx there. Now, what's the significance with that? Well, I think there's huge amount of significance with that, to pointing more into the direction that this has something to do with the goddess, because there are two lions that are with the goddess in the iconographies, and ultimately the lions are to serve as protectors. and one was facing the east, and one is facing the second one. They think is at the northwest corner of the Giza Plateau, pointing to the west. And I find that very interesting, right? Because this is something Cayce was even kind of talking about in some sort of way. And so Cayce, he claimed that basically the Atlanteans, they created three halls of records, right? And when you look at these pyramids, they could also be used to keep hidden knowledge safe from another cataclysm, or keep it in some sort of position to where it's preserved for a very, very long time for future generations, or future, you know, people to come across it and stumble across it and then self-realize, awaken, and then boom, like just recirculate the process all over again. He claimed pretty much that there's three halls of records, right? Or temples of records, to preserve their history, science, and spiritual knowledge before Atlantis sank. One of these is the sunken Atlantean land near Bimini in the Bahamas, which he said would rise again. One in the Yucatan Peninsula, and the third, the most detailed that he gives, is in Egypt at Giza. Now, Graham Hancock is very obsessed with the Bimini Road in the Bahamas. And Bimini Road, he says, is an ancient archaeological, ancient civilization ruin that's under the water there. He's done deep dives down there, checked these things out. I'd say it's pretty fascinating to look at myself. I don't think it's really that, him and what's his name uh, had a debate on Joe Rogan's show about this, but for it to be a natural part of creation, it's kind of mind blowing. I'm not ruling that out completely, but Bimini Road could probably be something that was buried underwater because of God's cataclysm, because of God's judgment on the earth, because he flooded the earth and destroyed all of that, right? To hopefully suppress this information from, getting out to mankind, because enlightenment is just it's not of God, in my opinion. You know, say the serpent gave the fruit to Eve. Eve gave the fruit to her husband, and both of their eyes were opened. So there's some sort of enlightenment to consciousness there that wasn't supposed to happen. God forbidded those things. And it's like he wants to do that again to mankind. Satan wants to, and bait humanity into taking a bite of that fruit one more time. And I think that's what's coming with all this Atlantis stuff. Um, the Egyptian Hall of Records was said to lie between the Sphinx and the Nile River, with a sealed entrance or passage connected to the right forepaw of the Sphinx. A chamber or tunnel runs from under the right forepaw to the record chamber or slash tomb itself. Some readings describe the hall as pyramid shaped or part of the pyramid of its own, along the passage leading from the Sphinx toward the pyramids. It was not directly under the pyramids, right? This was in a sense, kind of like beneath the Khufu or the Khafre pyramid, but connected via underground passages in the Giza complex. Some key notes that Casey's readings um, were that there is a chamber or passage from the right forepaw of the Sphinx to the entrance of the record chamber um, or record tomb. This may not be entered without an understanding. For those that were left as guards, may not be passed until after the period of their regeneration in the mount. This was a reading that this is a quote from him, right? Like, this was a reading he did back in July 1st, 1932. And another reading here, he said, this in position lies as the sun rises from the waters. The line of the shadow or light falls between the paw of the Sphinx. That was later set as the sentinel or guard, and which may not be entered from the connecting chambers from the Sphinx paw until the time has been fulfilled when the changes must be active in the sphere of man's experience. Between then, the Sphinx and the river. Um, so he's basically saying like this is humanity has to come into a certain time for this to happen. And I think we might honestly be getting to that kind of time if this is the talk amongst, you know, people and platforms. And I mean, this information is getting out there like wildfire. um he also says here that the Sphinx itself was built as a memorial and sentinel uh by these Atlantean era builders, um pretty much linked to figures like Rata, Ararat, and Hermes Thoth in the readings. Its form symbolized the relationship between the human, which is the spiritual, and the animal, which is the carnal natures. So there's like so much mystery religion with all this stuff. And he pretty much says that like the records of Atlantis, like what they contain is pretty much the beginnings, right? Like the origins of mankind. We heard dark journalists talk about that. And also not only the origins, but the history of mankind from like, the beginning all the way to the end. Right? It's like almost like this thing is going to present itself like another Bible, right? I mean, it's the furthest thing from the Bible, but it's going to present itself literally like it's going to be the word of the world, not the word of God. It's the word of the world. And pretty much, this is going to include how to build pyramids again. And this is going to have astronomical data, right? Movements of the stars, calendars that we've forgotten about as a humanity, and spiritual teachings of the law of one. Also, this is going to include physical records on imperishable materials, stone tablets, gold, copper, and other substances, some in Atlantean script and some in Egyptian. There was also a duplicate set in place in the pyramids. And he kind of goes on saying that this is how they were preserving this information, that even the Egyptians way long ago, remember he referenced the Thoth there a little bit ago, like that's kind of like how Egypt was found. And they're storing and preserving this information, not only to keep it from being destroyed, right? But also keeping it for future generations to come and stumble upon it, which I think is really happening. I mean, Matt LaCroix was on Danny Jones's podcast saying that Hermeticism is going to be the religion of the world. And he's like, I'm going to fight to die for it. I mean, that's like kind of scary, is it not? Isn't that kind of scary? That someone is going to fight to the death to make sure that Hermeticism becomes the world religion again. Like if you stand in the way of Matt LaCroix from becoming a god, understand that he'll probably kill you. Hypothetically speaking, I don't really know how to cover that up. But seriously, that's just one guy. Imagine the whole world on par with all this. Imagine the whole world is like, you Christians are in our way from us becoming God. Oh, dude. They're gonna start taking the swords out. They're gonna take everything out. Goodness. Yo, it's gonna be wild, cuz. Oh my goodness. You can't defeat me though. I got the armor of God on, son. You know what I'm saying? I got the armor of God on me. Death ain't got no sting on me. It's got sting on everybody else that don't believe, but death ain't got no sting on me. Let's go. Bring me home. It is what it is. I don't think Matt LaCroix could beat me in a fight whatsoever, though. Like, no shot. No shot, dude. Not one round will he be able to make it by. You get into the grip, you get into the bear paws, bro. It's done, son. Done. I love the guy, though. I love the guy. He's lost. He needs Jesus. I pray he gets saved. I pray all of them get saved, man. I mean, this is wild. This is a new religion. This could be the religion that we see, the harlot. This could literally be it. That brings me back to the Sons of the Law of One and just the Sons of Belial, really the technology that they used, the Firestone, the Twice Stone. What was this stone? What power did it have? When I go and I look at my research into the goddess, just even Cabelli, Cabelli was worshipped as a stone, a black stone. When you look even at Isis has some stone in her iconography. When you look at even the three daughters of the main supreme deity of the Arabic paganistic religion prior to Mecca, they were worshipped as a stone. That's why Mecca has the stone in and the Kaaba at Mecca. It's this meteorite that fell from the heavens. It was it's Lucifer. Oh, how art thou fallen? Right? Like Lucifer fell from heaven. And I think they were worshiping it in some sort of way as this stone. And who knows, right? I'm not even saying what Casey's saying is 100% right. But what it sounds like is just straight up Lucifer worship with the sons of the law of one. This false light, this false truth, this false awakening, this false enlightenment, this false love and harmony and balance. I say false because it's a deception, but it's when it comes here, it's going to look that good, and if anything, it's going to express itself to be that real, which is terrifying to me. I don't know about y'all, but that's kind of terrifying to me. Like, what happens next? What happens next? What happens to the church? Like, the church is going to be the ones that pretty much Barbara Marx Hubbard, right, the neo New Ager, the one that took Alice Bailey's work and made her own. She's like, these people that get out in the way, these people that stop this from happening, these people that restrict humanity from getting this Atlantean knowledge once again and this wisdom, this Sophia, they want to go to war. It's a noble sacrifice to them. It's like this purification process that the occult has. It's like when it's like Shiva, the destroyer. It's like the god Kali, where it's like this transformation of death into life. And the last show I did with John and Ben, John did a great job of talking about how pretty much there's even Christians saying some things that parallel to what I just said. There's even Christians out there that say that they're prophets, that say that the great and terrible day of the Lord is coming, but it's going to be great. But we're not to look at the day of the Lord to be great. It's nothing but destruction and chaos, and he's pouring out judgment. They're looking at it to be great because they're seeing that there's going to be false Christians out there that have Nephilim spirits that are going to die off in all this process. And ultimately, they're going to be saved through this. It's wild concept, dude. Like there's false prophets out there like crazy. And plus, I think that guy's gay. Nothing against gay people, but I mean, I don't know how you could be a prophet of God and I don't know, come off that way. I mean, some people I have my thoughts of Michael Turnbow. Michael Turnbow's kind of another guy there, like pretty sensual. But I digress. Yo, Doc, in the house. He says all goddess stuff has that iconography. Yeah, dude, it does. Yep, Mecca. Yep. Yep, it's all mother of the gods worship, man. I think it's the harlot in Revelation 17. I think the harlot in Revelation 17 is this uh illustration of Atlantis, man. I'll try and let me see if I can pull up a picture here. So, I mean, this kind of looks like Atlantis. It's so funny. I mean, ChatGPT kind of like literally when I write to it, and I'll write like a couple paragraphs of stuff of what it to make, and it makes it exactly to almost how literally I'm thinking. So this is what I wrote literally as I was reading Revelation 17. I drew this because I'll show you. I'll show you what AI created of my thoughts, and then I'll show you exactly what I drew out. I have a picture of it somewhere. Let me see if I can get it up here. Yeah, there it is. I'll pull this up. So basically, this is like, Babylon the Great, the harlot, who sits on 7 hills, 7 mountains, right? 7 kings, right, are also a part of this. Not 7 in total, 7 that have come through it, right? And then there's the 8th, which is Apollyon, right? Apollyon gets loosened from the pit and goes into perdition at this time. Then you've got 10 kingdoms that surround the harlot and fornicate with her, her being the ultimate head of the body, if that makes any sense. Um, Let me pull up this. It's so funny. I got to pull this up because this is a picture that I drew. And it looks exactly like it, dude. Like it looks exactly like it. Do you see this? I drew this as I was researching and studying this. Got Babylon here, right? You got 7 hills here. And you've got 10 nations around it. And I've got all my other little stuff there too. But it's just interesting, man. It's all very, very interesting. And there's something to it. I want to hear from other Christians in the comments of this episode what y'all think about this, because there's something to it. There's something to why all of these Atlantean mysteries are coming up to the surface. People are talking about it. It's been on Joe Rogan's show for the past 15 years. And really, when you look at his show and the narrative that he's pushed, it's a beginning to an end kind of story. And as we're, where we're at, and there's no end to his show yet, right? That's not what I'm saying. But it just tells a story in that way. And where we're at right now, humanity seems to be entering into the 6th root race of theosophy, where intellect, individual leadership, and just individuality in itself is going to start to go away, right? Like it's almost like the 5th root race kind of has a lot of what Steiner says is the Ahriman force upon it. It's kind of like what Cayce says with the group of Belial, the sons of Belial. It seems like humanity's starting to separate itself from the world and the state that it's in, and going and transferring and evolutionizing into another world, another state, another world order. And so I think ultimately that new world order is going to be a new age world order. It's where things will be more spiritual. It'll be like Alice Bailey talks about in her book in intellect and intuition. It's where the roles reverse, right? So here today we're at the intellect state, right? We've got the times table, we've got mathematics, measurements, all these things. And what they say basically in that 5th root race is that it's the intellect is perceived to be advanced, but really it's not. It's when you get to the state of having intuition higher than intellect is when you actually have more of an advanced civilization. And so they believe that those sons of the law of one were more intuitive, and they suppressed their intellect. Now, I've heard Jake Barber talk about this with how he summons UFOs. And ultimately, the way he summons UFOs, there's 2 ways that he explains it. One is through technology, where they have technology to stimulate the mind to kind of flip this switch of meditation. like hemisync and things like this, right? You can see in the Epstein files. Or you lower your intellect, just like right? This is, again, he's pushing an Atlantean narrative and he may not even know it. Like he's telling you to lower your intellect and increase your intuition. And that right there is exactly what is talked about with Blavatsky's work with the fourth root race, which the fourth root race was the Atlantean civilization. So we've got a guy here in the fifth root race talking about how to go into meditative states to connect with UFOs and to ultimately control them. Just think of that as technology, right? Like he's able to move technology with his mind, right? Um, and he's describing how the civilization prior to his, how they were able, he's describing how Atlanteans used technology and were able to move these things pretty much. Um, which when you look at like the pyramids and you look at how they're built, they're magnificent megalithic structures that we kind of still struggle today to kind of fully understand how these people that didn't even have a good understanding of the wheel just yet, but they were able to stack all these millions and millions of tons of blocks on top of one another, airtight, sealed chambers. Something's interesting about that. Like I said, I think those pyramids were definitely built in the antediluvian period, which would technically be that fourth root race of theosophy, which would then be that Atlantean civilization before the cataclysm happened. But God destroyed that to ultimately rescue people, rescue his elect out of that to try and restart it. And then that's where you get the Tower of Babel after that. They were trying to rebrand Atlantis all over again. God destroyed that. And I think in our times that we're approaching, they're going to try and rebrand it again. And I've gone on shows, I've talked about it on this show where I think that, the Tower of Babel 2.0 is going to have something to do with artificial intelligence. I think that the Harlot has something to do with artificial intelligence. When you look at the movie here, let's just pull it up. It's called Mercy. And it's a movie that I really do not recommend anyone to watch because it's extremely boring. This is extremely boring. And I saw it in the movie theater and it was absolutely terrible, but I couldn't, all I saw was all the symbolism behind it. And so I mean, this is just a terrible image of it though. I don't know why it's not, maybe let me do this actually. All right, hold on. I'm going to pull this up. Chris Pratt, Mercy. Now, what this movie is about is that artificial intelligence is the justice system of the future, and that it's pretty much the judge, the jury, it's everything. And so this guy, Chris Pratt, in the movie, he was set up, and he was set up. He was framed, right? He was framed in the movie, and he was basically consulting with the artificial intelligence the whole time. And he had to basically prove himself to not be guilty. He's his own lawyer. He's his own he's his own representative, right? There is no more lawyer systems in this future society. And so this woman here in the background is the artificial intelligence. Aha, there we go. We got more goddess stuff, more divine feminine stuff linked into movies. And basically what's behind her, as she's like this digital hologram, almost like what we may see as the image of the beast in the future. That behind her is a quantum computer, which pretty much looks like an upside down hanging chandelier with a bunch of gold and precious metals that are there to ultimately lower the conductivity of the heat and to pretty much cool down the quantum computing chip. And I find that interesting because This has a lot of connections to what is known as Lady Justice in the Greek and Roman stuff, right? Lady Justice here. Lady Justice kind of represents pretty much, and she's pretty much like an allegorical personification of the moral force in judicial systems, symbolizing fair and equal administration of law without corruption, avarice, or prejudice. She is typically depicted as a woman derived from the Roman goddess Justia, holding scales, a sword, and wearing a blindfold. Very interesting stuff, because I even saw, and I'll try and find it, but there was a buddy of mine, John sent me this in our group chat, and it was a video that Observer came out with, and Observer, I think it's called Observer. It came out with this AI video. I shared it on William Ramsey's podcast, and I'm trying. Here we go. Here we go. Boom! I think I found it, yo. Oh, I found it. Let's go. I found you. I'll pull this up for everybody. But this is pretty much, look, this is all connecting here. This is all going to connect. And I ultimately think that that Firestone, that Atlantean stuff connects to the goddess. The goddess was projected as like this divine source connection. And that ultimately it was they believed it to be the creator of everything. And who knows, maybe it was what justified their entire oh, wrong one. But it's what kind of, it's the law of one. Law of one. What was the thing there that was in control of the law? Like, what does the law there mean of the law of one? I can only kind of think that there was some sort of, not judiciary system, but this divine source had a law in some sort of way. I don't know. I can't really explain it because I'm not there yet, but I'll get there. I'll pull this up here. This is interesting. It shows literally exactly what we what we just talked about.
Journalists ruined your reputation, not with evidence, with a narrative. And when they come for you, there's no way to fight back. Until now. Introducing Objection, the first AI tribunal. Former CIA and FBI agents will investigate. They gather evidence and make it public, permanently. The AI tribunal checks the record and renders the verdict. You can save your reputation in days, not years. From the team that bankrupted Gawker, mastermind Aaron D'Souza, comes Objection. Truth isn't what goes viral, it's verified. File an objection.
Isn't that kind of weird, huh? Look, see, there you go. There's your D-Wave quantum computing computers. Oh my goodness, it's there. All right, I'm going to break this down. Oh my goodness. Yo, sometimes these streams, like, I don't prepare for these streams really, and I'm trying to get better, like, right off the cuff. But here is your false trinity right here, right? Here's your false trinity. But here are also your doorways of hermeticism, right? You have the underworld, right? Like, for example, in some Sumerian places, like the Mesopotamian cultures, you'll see like Enki is here. This is like the doorway to reality or the physical plane. And then this is the underworld god of, I forget what the underworld god is to the Mesopotamians, but pretty much here, this is also has connections to Donald Trump's arch, right? Donald Trump's arch there with Lady Liberty at the top. uh, which is wild because that's the divine goddess. Here's the divine goddess in the middle, which when you look at his arch, okay, there's two doors on the right side. On the left, there's one door on the left, one door on the right. But then there's a middle passageway. And the middle passageway throughout all the cultures has always been a bigger opening than the left and the right. So the left represents the underworld, the middle represents the material plane, and the right represents the celestial plane. You'll even see some, like the Temple of Ionis, for example, will have an eagle's head on their god that represents the celestial because that's the heavens. The eagle represents the bird of the air, right? That can fly in the heavens, right? Um, Very interesting stuff. But like I said, with the movie Mercy, right? The movie Mercy, she was basically artificial intelligence powered by quantum computers. And that's what this is representing here. Now, obviously, this is this is AI. Like, this is all AI made. Like, I don't think this is a real commercial. I think this is AI, but I still think they kind of show you these things. They flash it in front of you. Um, and these look exactly like, not exactly, but very similar to D-Wave quantum computing. Uh, Maybe I can get that pulled up here. D-Wave quantum computers, right? There we go. I'm going to share this with you guys. Right? D-Wave quantum computers. It's exactly like what those boxes look like. Right here, you can even see, D-Wave quantum computers kind of look like this now. They honestly look like black cubes. They look like the Kaaba. They look like the stone, dude. They look like the stone. You get it? Are we connecting here, or am I just like schizo as ever? This looks like the Kaaba, which the Kaaba, right, was worshipped by the three daughters of their pre-Islamic pagan, religion, and they worshipped a meteorite that fell from the sky. And they ultimately worshipped the black cube around it, the black cube going back to Saturn, all that kind of stuff. Very interesting. So in the movie Mercy, this is exactly what's behind the girl. This is behind the image of the woman, is right here. This is almost identical to what I saw in the movie that was behind her the entire time. And they flash these things at you in movies, right? They show you what's coming, man. What the future is going to be like. Now, where does this play out with Atlantis? Well, this plays out with how humanity is going to go. Are they going to choose the Sons of Belial philosophy? Or are they going to choose the Sons of Law of One? And I think with how propaganda and how the chaos magic and how all these big platforms are just constantly exposing the Sons of Belial, it's naturally going to instill an awakening into humanity to go towards the Law of One philosophies. It's not that the Law of One didn't use the technology that Belial had. They used the same technology. They just used it for good. They used it for good, or what they thought was good. And very fascinating stuff. This is a little bit of a closer image here of like a quantum computer. And this is all kind of like what the harlot in 17 is decked out in. She's decked out in precious stones, gold, silver, pearls, gems, all of this stuff. So, and I've even had someone, forgive me, I can't remember your name, but shout out to you. You emailed me. Oh, was it Margaret? I think it was Margaret. Maybe it was Margaret. I think it was Margaret that sent me this. She's like, yeah, the quantum computers are like the goddess, the harlot, all this stuff. And I see what you're saying now. I see what you're saying now. This could be what operates itself in a city and that all the nations fornicate with it because it's in a way, helping them become like gods. It's not the fact that Neuralink is ever going to go away if people choose the law of one. It's just that instead of using it for domination and for control, humanity will use it for good and for spiritual implications and for spiritual enlightenment and all that stuff. Like they're going to use this stuff to try and make themselves God. Yo, it's twisted. It's wild. Oh my goodness. This picture is kind of mind blowing here. Like, I wouldn't really want to be in this room. The amount of electromagnetic radiation coming off of this thing has to be like sitting inside of 50 Tesla vehicles all at once. I mean, and you know what's funny is you'll hear Gordy Rose, the guy who came up with came up with the D-Wave chip, one of the first of their kind, one of the first quantum computing chips ever made. He says that these things are going to allow entities to come into this world, and that these entities are going to live amongst us as quantum computing robots that humans will never, ever be able to discern. Which is wild, wild stuff, yo. So I want to go back to that video. We'll break it down a little bit and then we'll close it in. We'll close shop. I don't even know how late it is. 10:12. Screw it. We're going for another 3 hours, baby. Let's go. Come on. Are we ready? I'm not ready. All right. So we'll just kind of go through. We'll go through and look at this, right? Crime, all this stuff, Palantir, all that stuff's not going away. It's just going to be switched. Its philosophies are going to change, right? The world's going to separate itself from these dominating powers and go towards hey, how can humanity use these things for good? It's so funny. Here we go. There's Lady Justice, right? Lady Justice, which has, this is the Queen of Heaven. In some parallels, right? There's even a tongue on her chest, which represents the law of one. That's wild. I didn't even see that. That's kind of interesting. And look, there's the Sphinx, yo. There's the Sphinx. I'm onto something here. I just can't really coordinate it like I really want to, but I'll get there. A lot of this is like trying to decipher mystery religion. It's extremely hard because I'm not an initiate, okay? I'm just a normal guy trying to pick this stuff apart. All right. But there's the Sphinx, there's the lion, there's the beast, right? That the harlot rides in an allegorical perspective. Interesting stuff, right? So we'll get through. We'll keep going through. What do we got here in the background? It kind of looks like a weird gathering of gods, fallen angels. That's so wild. Candace Owens posted a picture of her with, instead of this blindfolding her, it was around her head because it changed over time, but it represents the same thing as what Lady Justice was known for before the Catholic Church took some things and changed it. Now, what I saw in this was interesting. Now this is probably a real place. This looks like London, but that looks like a tower, yo. That looks like a pyramid. That looks like something that this right here would be operating in. And it could be like that central location, like I showed you before, where the harlot is kind of in the middle of this, is like the middle center mass of a global order with 10 kingdoms around it, right? Almost kind of like what we see. Let me see if I can pull it up. Right, it's kind of like what we see here. Where are we at? Boom. Bam. Zing. Right? It's kind of like this would be where the tower is that's controlling the whole world in some sort of way, but it's not controlling, it's kind of helping humanity. And that's what you see too with the Bledsoe narrative, right? The Bledsoe narrative is that the lady is going to come and act as that wisdom, that force that's going to help humanity from this incoming threat, or this, which I believe that they're gonna say is an incoming threat, but ultimately it's Jesus Christ and his angels. And we'll cover that on a deeper show. You know, me and John had a long conversation on the phone for hours talking about this, and we're like, dude, we got to do a show on this. We got to talk about this because we're breaking through. We're breaking through. We're getting to something here. With how the alien agenda is going to fall into all of this. What's its true purpose? So let me bring this video back up. This is fun. I'm having fun now. I'm tired of reading Cayce's work. Dummy. He's actually not a dummy. I think he's maybe on to something here, or he's getting fed these illusions of demons, but ultimately of what's coming in the future. Oh, look at that. And it kind of gets nighttime real quick. I don't know what that means, what that's symbolic for. Look, she's worried. She gets judged. No, I didn't do it. No, don't turn me into the councils. Don't kill me. Wild stuff. Certificate of judgment. There you go. AI is gonna serve. How interesting would it be for artificial intelligence to be the judge, jury, and everything? It's kind of like what the Bilderberg Group and what the Club of Rome talked about way back in the day. That is a tonk on her chest, by the way. That is the law of one symbol. That's the law of one symbol. Look, I'll type it in: law of one symbol. It's the symbol of Ra. There it is. That's exactly what that is. And there's the goddess. Oh my Ansata. Oh man, we're on to something here, I think. We're on to something, right? Like I should probably throw my tinfoil hat on. I should. I must. Man. And look, there's the cube. There's a pyramid. Yo, this is wild. If anyone's listening to the show on audio, just come over to the YouTube. You can check out some of the stuff that I'm showing on the stream. We'll
Your reputation.
here, and we'll see what's at the end. So these people are all kind of looking at their cell phones. Look, they're all locked in. They're all locked into this hive mind mentality of some sort. They're all happy. Oh my goodness, it's the law of one. And then it looks like, whoa, they're kind of shocked. It's weird, huh? What kind of symbolism is this? Final objection. And you know what's so funny is this hand right here, right? You can only really specifically see 3 fingers, right? And that makes me think of this hand right here. Hand of Zabazios. Is that kind of interesting that those are the 3 fingers that are up there? Then look at this. That's enlightenment. It's a pineal gland. There's the ram. All kinds of stuff. This all represents a duality of male and feminine energies. And there you go. You've got a serpent right there, a dragon at the top. Wild, yo, wild. Well, listen, anyways, I'm going to do some more homework on this. Maybe I can come up with another show and we can dig into more of the symbolism with all this. But I had a lot of fun. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Shout out to Craig, Mark, Susie. Good to see you. Lattice. Oh, just good as always to see everybody here. Catherine, everyone's on fire tonight. Thank you for tuning in. We had an amazing turnout. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Thank you for listening. If you're on audio, thank you to everybody that supports the show. And at the end of each show, I'm just going to try and circle it back into that. we can talk about these things. I really just don't know. I don't know exactly what's going on. It's just interesting information to maybe bring to the table, to offer, to see how this sits with prophecy. And at the end of the day, it's Jesus Christ that saves. Like Jesus hung on a cross for me, you, for all of us, for the whole world. You know, in the beginning was the word was with God, the word was God. You know, the word became flesh and dwelt among man. And he is our savior. He died for mankind. And I'm just so thankful for being saved. I'm thankful for the opportunity to hear the gospel, to have a soft heart, to turn to the truth. Because at the end of the day, the truth is the truth. And I'm thankful for the fear of the Lord. I'm thankful for just the truth in the gospel. I was reading the Bible earlier today, I mean, the Gospel of John specifically, going through it again. And man, it's really, really amazing. It's really amazing what Jesus Christ did for us, what he did for humanity. And it's going to be even more amazing seeing him come back and judge this world for how wicked it truly is, for how all the cultures and all the religions of the world at the end of the day worship the goddess, and they worship her son and her consort. And he's going to do away with all this. He's going to create a new heaven and a new earth. And I just praise God for the good and the bad. And if anyone has any questions pertaining to how to be saved, how to come to salvation, how you know how to do these things, just email me. That's all I'm really here to really ultimately try to do, is to um, bring the gospel of Jesus Christ to, you know, this show. And with any topic that we talk about, to bringing it back to the gospel, because he is the way, the truth, and the life. And uh, we really, really, at the end of the day, should put our trust, put our faith in him, rely on him through all of these interesting times of deception, multiple layers of deception, right? Like multiple layers. Satan is like a person who creates multiple businesses throughout his time to ultimately bury the origin of where all this stuff kind of comes from. That's how shysters are very successful for conning people. Is they, you know, I got conned by a contractor. I almost lost everything. But because I trusted in the Lord, and because I trusted in him, and I kept my faith in him, and I knew he was going to get me through it, he did. And he's going to get you through anything that you're going through. Jesus is there with you through any trial, any tribulation, any persecution, any hardship that you're facing. Jesus is with you. Cancer, heart disease, death, mortality. I mean, just morbidities, anything. He is there with you. He feels the pain you're going through. He feels every inch of suffering that we go through in this life. And he wants you to, at the end of the day, put it on him and not worry so much about the things that truly happen to you in this life. Put it on him, right? Like he's taken away the sting of death, right? He's given us eternal life. And even though we will face the first death, each and every one of us, right? It's something we can't escape. It's more or less like a, when does that happen for us? Just know that if your faith is in him, his grace is sufficient for you, and that he is the ultimate bread of life through everything. But thank you everyone for tuning in. Shoot me an email if anyone's interested in what I just kind of spilled out there at the end, because ultimately that is my main goal for the show, and that's what God's putting on my heart. Thank you everyone again for supporting the show. I appreciate y'all very much. If anyone wants to support the show, come on over to the Patreon. We got an awesome growing community over there. We've got a group chat. We also, you can also get into, you can have direct communication with me over there, and you get your ad-free stuff there as well. This is a second time. This is, how do I say this? It's like a full-time job for me. I'm trying to make it a full-time job for myself. Uh, God's pushing me to do so. I work at the fire department every 24 hours, off 48, or every third day, right? I work every third day at the fire department. But when I'm off, God's been putting on my heart to, with my research and what I'm looking at, what I'm studying, and what's on my mind, to get it out to others and ultimately bring the gospel out to others. Um, but if anyone wants to support the channel too, you don't have to just do it at patreon.com/the biblical hitman. Come on over to the YouTube, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and share the show. Drop a comment down below, anything that's on your mind. Hopefully it was a pretty fun stream and entertaining for people, because I'm going to continue to be pumping these things out on my days off. Also, you can support the show on audio platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spreaker, Spotify, all of those places. And while you're there, just make sure you hit the follow, leave a review, leave a nice one, hopefully, and shout out to the super chats. I moved the chat to the right of the screen for this episode because I had a lot of notes I needed to kind of look at. But thank you, thank you. Is this Catherine? Thank you, Catherine, so much for the super chat. She gives the peace sign. Peace and love to you always. Thank you so much for supporting the show. I love it. I love it. I love it. And I'm just very grateful for it. And thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. Also, thank you, Craig, man. Peace and blessings, Stephen. Peace and blessings to you too, brother. Much love. Thank you for the super chats, everybody. And thank you for being here. Thanks for giving me a chance. Thanks for giving the Lord a chance. And we've got a lot more work to do. I'm still young. I'm only 35, and I plan on doing this till the day I die, or until the day I'm like, I just can't do this anymore. And hopefully my daughter can kind of fill in my shoes. Right. That's kind of like um, every dad's, vision, right, is for your kids to kind of follow in your footsteps. And so pray for me, pray for becoming more of a stronger man of God, a better husband, uh, you know, just a better leader for my family, and to ultimately understand that my first ministry is my family in some sort of way. And appreciation to them too. Brittany, if you're watching, love you. Cambry, love you as well. I sacrifice a lot of time to do this show, and so I'm just grateful for having the family that allows me to do that. But hey, listen, I'm gonna go, and that's a wrap. Have a good night, everybody. See you next time.